It's been such a long time. How are you, actually?
I'm doing pretty well for the most part. I just sold our second house and moved into a new one. So this is my new studio. You can't see much of it here, but it's much larger than my last one. And that's taken a lot of time. And prior to that, I had a number of projects that sucked up all my time. And you have been busy as well.
Yeah, I mean, after NAB, or starting from NAB, I think our last episode was right before NAB or something like that.
Yeah.
Then NAB came in. And NAB itself for me was like 10 days. And a lot of things happened during NAB. I did presentations for several groups of people. And then right after NAB, I had a trip to Amsterdam for work. And then back here. And then things started going like a snowball. And soon thereafter, I was also in Vancouver for the Mac DevOps conference from MadX. And that was awesome as well, but that time is just flying. It's impossible to just sit down, set up the camera, get some nice subject, and hit record. Even for my other channels that I don't need to coordinate with you, for example,
yeah.
It's difficult to just sit and record and not only record, right, and edit.
Yeah, well, see, that's the funny thing, is our last episode was with Chris Fenwick, and it was all about podcasting. At the end of the episode, what we walked away with was, if you want to build and maintain an audience, you need frequent, regular content. And it doesn't matter how well it's produced. And I was on board with that completely. But since we've had so much time where we weren't able to record, that allowed me to really think about what's important to me. And to be completely honest, what's really important to me is not having a huge audience. If we're going to take the time to record, I just want to put out an episode if I think it has value. If 10 people watch it, I don't really care. I don't have time to put out weekly episodes. If our viewers go away because we don't have an episode at 8 a.m. every Tuesday, that's not the kind of viewer I want anyway. We'll be here when we have something good to say, and if you're there to join us, that's wonderful. But
yeah, I think it's worth to mention that we never had as a objective to make money out of YouTube. So we don't have that objective that, we need to get to 1,000 subscribers and then we need to get to 5,000, 10,000, because then we're going to have this ad revenue and then we're going to have these sponsors. That has never been the case. So for example, if that's not the case, we still need to do other stuff to pay our bills and live, right? So that's one reason why it's very difficult to go and commit for every Monday, every Tuesday, or whatever, every fortnight.
If we are unable to put out an episode in a week or in a month, it's because we're busy doing our day jobs. And that's what this show is about anyway, is the work involved in our day jobs. So it makes a lot of sense. Anyway, we're back now.
So that's the reason why there was this more or less big gap in between our last episode and this one.
Yeah.
And now we also have a follow-up on Chris Fenwick's episode, is that we did some thinking and we did some discussing about how we're going to keep doing the format of the show going forward. So what was your takeaway from that conversation with Chris and how we are taking this forward?
I think everything Chris said made a ton of sense. Again, I'm not as concerned about building a huge audience, and I know we can't put out episodes every week. But one thing he mentioned that we are going to pursue is not every episode will be this full-fledged video production. A lot of our interviews, our 3-person or 4-person, talking head shows are just going to be audio only, because what we've learned is a large portion of our viewership, a lot of the population in general, they like to listen to this type of thing in the car when they're driving. You shouldn't be watching video when you drive. So, and it's like 10 times less work for us to just do audio only. And so that way we can still get our guests. We can save them the setup time and the hassle of sending us these huge files, cut down our editing time significantly, and then more frequently put out shows.
Yeah, so it's one decision that will make us be capable of hopefully coming somewhere near to a regular show, right?
Yeah.
I mean, although we just said that we are not promising that we're promising the content, but
The only thing I'm going to promise is we will do the best we can with each episode that we do put out. And by now, you all know who we are. So if our episode's going to start slow like this and we're not just jazzed with energy, it's because we're not performing for you. We're just sitting down having a conversation. Sorry.
yeah, sometimes I might do, yay guys, how are you doing? No, but today is not the case. It's yeah.
Two things about my current setup. One related to that is, related to my new studio, is I've got a closet over here with folding doors, and I've got my Synology NAS and my 3 OWC drives in the closet with cords running out. So are you hearing any background noise here?
Not at all.
I mean, I'm recording my audio in Logic Pro 10, and when I'm not speaking, I see a complete flat line. So I've significantly been able to mitigate my noise just by having that available to me. The second thing is this is the first episode I'm recording with my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, which is kind of funny to me because our most hated episode several episodes back was impressions of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, which you had rented. At the end of that episode, I was fairly convinced I was going to go further along with the Panasonic line of cameras, but instead, I sold one of my 2 GH5s, got the Blackmagic, kitted it out, and so now this is the first episode I'm recording with it. I have done one shoot with it, and I have to tell you, I love it. So my experience with it was dramatically different from your first experience with yours.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning something that we did talk about in that episode is, in the end of the day, this is not the camera that you go rent and then you plug in and you start recording.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is not.
No.
I mean, we were talking just offline here. Oh, did you memorize all the steps of the ISOs and the changes where highlights are being less recorded or darks or whatever? So it's not that camera that, like the GH5, that you go from ISO 0 to ISO, I don't know, 3200, and things are just doubling. You're increasing that gain, and everything's proportional, is linear. Is not that camera. And so when you're used to shooting with Red, Sony, GH5s, and then you get the Blackmagic or any camera with a second circuit, then yes, it's like, what I would tell people is, oh, you're going from automatic to manual, so you're gonna really have to take your time exploring that side of the camera. So for me, I was coming from single circuit cameras the whole time, including the Blackmagic Ursa Mini.
Sure.
So Blackmagic Ursa Mini, even the Red Helium, these are all single circuit. Red only put out a double circuit on the Gemini. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good thing maybe to get people to think about is 1 circuit, 2 circuits for ISO. Yeah, it's like going from automatic to manual. You're gonna really have to do some homework there.
Yeah, well, and this the native ISO, the base level is, I believe, 400, and the next one starts at 1250. It's 1600. And when I was setting up, I had this set to ISO 1000. But the problem is, and this is true of any camera, the more you raise the ISO within any setting circuit, the more noise you're going to get. And so I thought, well, why am I pushing this to the highest of the first circuit? Let me just jump over to 1250, which is the cleanest of the next circuit. Turned down my light a little bit, much better image, much less noise, although the noise wasn't bad. But I like that manual control. It's the reason I got the Zoom F8. I want the physical knobs. I don't want to dial into menus it's why I don't use autofocus, for example.
Well, yeah, I'm using autofocus right now. You see, I can get very close to the camera and then I can go away.
It
doesn't really bother me that much.
I'm gonna get pretty blurry.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me that much if it's for something like this.
No, not at all. There's
the autofocus.
There's nothing wrong with it. As long as you get the shot, I don't care how you pulled it off. The problem is most autofocus is not reliable.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting steady here in my place. I'm not moving that much. The only thing that the autofocus can be bothering is if you look at the background somewhere, you might see the background pulsing.
Sure.
But if you're looking at the background, it means that I'm doing something wrong that you're not looking to my eyes.
So we're talking about all kinds of auto features versus manual, or an easy approach versus a more dedicated.
Which falls into the convenience
Yeah.
side of things, yeah.
Yeah. So over the weekend, we were kind of bitching about certain things, a trend of things that's been happening. And we wanted to kind of rant about that this episode. It's going to jump all over the place. And for one, I'll just start with, I'm shooting with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K now. And I've been on the Facebook group for that. And what bothers me is somebody will take the time to snap a picture of their camera rig and put it on the group with no caption, with no text, with no information. And this happens like multiple times an hour. You just get pictures of rigs, and it's like, how is this helping anyone's life? Could you put any less effort into, if you have a rig, for example, I bought the Tilta rig and I've got an SSD holder with, if I was to post a picture of that, I would explain what the benefits were and link to where you could find it or learn more about it. I mean, at least give some information to people so they can walk away from it. Otherwise, it's just rig porn. And what is the point of that?
Well, I'm pretty sure that whoever started those groups, their intention was to help other people that are within that situation, right? Mm-hmm. So a group for Blackmagic owners, it would be to help Blackmagic owners. So I'm pretty sure that the intention of the groups, they start that way.
Sure, yeah, they all start that way.
The problem is that you have two things. You have helping people, you have trolling, and you have just attention seeking. Helping people is difficult because you need to have knowledge, and you need to take your time and explain in a way that people will understand and that it will be helpful. Trolling, you can just, I think people do it for the fun, mm-hmm. of it, which is not helpful and it doesn't advance the conversation. And then the third one, there is the attention seekers, is like, look how pretty my rig is, and I think that's what you're saying there. I left Facebook, right? Mm-hmm. Because I was seeing too much of this type of things, and in general, I don't like Facebook. And I started some groups that I missed from Facebook. I started them on Telegram. Yep. And to mitigate those type of things, I put on the group a rule that is be polite, be helpful, I forgot what are all the rules, but it's basically be nice to each other. And if your comment will not advance the conversation towards a resolution, refrain from commenting. Yeah. So if the comment of someone would be just saying, no, this will not work, please don't comment. Anyone can say, no, it doesn't work. It takes someone with real knowledge and someone really helpful to go and say, this is the way that things are going to work. So we don't need a lot of people pointing at, no, this is not the right way. This is not helpful. So I'm trying to create a community in which people, whenever they're participating and whenever you get the notification, it's supposed to be something useful. It's supposed to be something that will advance that group towards a goal, an objective, or educating people. Now, educating people by saying that they are wrong is also not the way to go, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, and there are a number of, for example, Facebook groups dedicated to professional Final Cut Pro 10 editors. And it's the same thing there. People will just send a still frame from their video, or even just link to their video with no explanation. And it's like, how is this relevant to Final Cut Pro 10? Is there some feature of that software? I mean, it could be Adobe or DaVinci or Avid. It doesn't matter what it is, what the group is, but you need to tie that back into what that is. Otherwise, this isn't a demo reel group, right? What is it about that tool that allowed you to make this particular edit, or what did you enjoy, or was there some workflow tip that you want to share with us? Otherwise, it's like, what are you doing? Just share that on your personal Facebook page. It just seems like a huge waste of time to me. I don't understand.
Yeah, people are posting in the wrong place, I guess.
Completely. And also it's like, this is, in this specific example, it's supposed to be professional editors. So you're getting comments like, I don't know, how do I import footage? Well, how did you even make it into this group? This is not, I mean, we all want to help you, but this is before even 101.
But that's exactly that example that I said earlier. How do you import footage? Literally put that question on a Google search or on YouTube. There you go. There is your answer, and you're not taking any extra time for anyone that they're doing their work right now.
Or use the help menu right in the app. Right?
The answer is right there.
Yeah. Every app comes with a manual. I've read it. It's over 1,000 pages, but I've still read it. It's important to know the tools that you're using and how to solve problems that you've run across.
Every time you go take a dump, take the manual with you and read. At some point, you're gonna finish it. but it's just this incredible reality of convenience. It is so convenient to just call your buddy and like, hey, dude, how do I do this? And then your buddy is stopping what they're doing. They're out of their flow. Now they're having to concentrate on your issue.
Mm-hmm.
They're giving you the answer, which for you're going to be very grateful. And then it's going to take another 20 minutes for your buddy to go back into their zone and doing what they were doing on something that you could have figured out yourself. Okay, if you're not a self-learner, go take a course.
I've spent so much money, and I am a self-learner, but I've spent so much money on training, specifically Ripple training. But before that, lynda.com and so forth, because it's important to me to understand what I'm doing. I mean, there is a time and a place where you're in the middle of an edit, for example, and you've got a clock ticking and there's a deadline looming, and you've got one specific problem. Sure, go seek out that one problem. And in that example, it's nice to find, for example, a video that just gets right to the point and boom, okay, there's a problem. Now I can continue my work. But in general, to understand how something works, you're not going to get that in a soundbite or in a caption. You need to understand the mechanics of how this thing works and functions. Like how can I override the magnetic timeline? Well,
100 different ways.
First, you need to ask yourself why you want to do that.
On the other hand, if someone would pose that question, to advance the person towards a resolution, we can't ask why do you want that. The question was, how do I override? Okay, there is the tilde, there is the position tool.
Sure.
And as I said, that would be the right way. Because I see a lot in forums, people, you know what you're doing, let's say, and then you need this one piece of information. And then people start challenging you. Why do you want that?
I would ask a more specific question, because using the position tool or using the tilde key, for example, are two different things. So I might ask specifically, what specifically are you trying to achieve? Yeah. Then I can tell you, it's the tilde key or the
yeah, but that's a what, not a why. It's like what you're trying to achieve, but not why do you need it. I think it's just a matter of phrasing. Also because when you ask someone in a written form why, it sounds like a challenge.
Sure.
And what you need it sounds more like, okay, I need a little bit more information in order to go and help you.
So instead of replying with why are you wasting my time, I should say, what are you wasting my time for?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And this is not to discourage people from asking help on forums and groups, of course. I mean, if you suddenly open your Final Cut Pro 10 and your thumbnails are black,
sure,
and you're not going to understand why that is, it is good to go and still Google it, you still search on YouTube, and of course, if those two fail and it doesn't work out for you, ask people on groups, because people will have an experience with that. I've had experience with that.
Sure.
From proxy files being corrupted to XML imports to those are the two that are popping into my head right now for black thumbnails.
Well, when your computer crashes, it's helpful when you ask about that online to send your crash threads.
Yes.
Now, when I see that, it's just gobbledygook. It doesn't mean anything to me, but there's going to be somebody there who understands code and all that stuff and can help you diagnose what the problem is. Well, it's no different than black frames. If you just say, I've got black frames, please help, that's not enough information. Like, are you editing multicam? Or, talk about what is happening with your media and how your project is set up.
When did they go from normal thumbnails to black thumbnails? What were the steps involved? Oh, I just closed last night, and today when I opened, they were black.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a place to start. I mean, is your drive connected? Did the drive change name? I mean, because if you have a drive that's called drive, and it doesn't amount properly on Finder, the name drive on volumes, it stays locked, and then when you plug it in again, for you it's not gonna make any difference, but in the system in the background it's gonna be called drive-1.
Yeah.
Because the first one is still locked there. So this would be a reason, for example, that people would see their media offline. It's the same drive, nothing changed, but yeah, there are, it's software, there's so much stuff happening in the background. And troubleshooting, part of troubleshooting is knowing what were the steps taken in order to get there. Like, oh, my keyboard's not working. Okay, is it connected? Oh yeah, thank you.
Yes. That extra information when you post about it really helps us diagnose the problem and actually get you to a solution. Otherwise, like I don't understand this. I feel like a curmudgeon saying this, but it's like I don't understand this panic, cry for help, don't take any time to solve your own problems first. I mean, I didn't have the internet when I was teaching myself this. I had the library. The librarian didn't know all about what I was researching, so she or he was no help. Like, you just have to learn this stuff. But in the process of looking for the solution, I discovered like 20 other really valuable things that are useful in other areas. And I think the breadth of that, like understanding frame rates or interlace versus progressive or how that happened. I mean, nowadays people think everything's progressive, but it's not. And they don't have under any foundational knowledge as to why. Why any of that existed, or why it was really incredible technology at the time, or why it's even still used.
I'm seeing people editing video because it's so accessible nowadays. I mean, you get an iPhone and there is tons of apps for you to edit video. You go on Instagram and you're literally filming and posting, and in a way or another you're editing video. But they have a lot of people that if they start this way because of the convenience of how video has become, and I think that's a problem. Yeah. Things are getting too convenient. We're doing everything in the name of convenience, and we're missing some very important information, like you said at the beginning. And in the case that I saw the other day was there was someone with a footage of 60 frames a second, and they wanted to slow it down for quarter speed. I'm like, yeah, quarter speed of 60 is 15 frames a second. Yeah. So if basically if you have 60 frames a second, you put in a timeline of 30, you can slow down 50%.
Yep, twice.
Okay. Yes, because you need 30 frames to play 1 second, and you have 60 frames in 1 second, so you can make them occupy that amount of time. Now, quarter speed for 60 is 15 frames a second. So if your timeline would be 15 frames a second, you could slow it down to a quarter.
It's just this basic, again, foundational knowledge that's lacking in so many people nowadays because the information is so easy to get to. It's like people asking for like a half frame, which doesn't exist. I mean, sort of with interlaced, you get a vertical half, or looking at like a half pixel. That's a physical impossibility. Yet I still see posts about these things because I shouldn't say nobody, many people are not taking the time to build up this knowledge base.
So for example, what is it basic in video? Understand what a video is. A series of stills played in a sequence that gives the appearance that it's a movement. Mm-hmm. Now, what makes it look like what is required for it to look like that is moving? So it's a certain amount of those stills in a certain amount of time. So you choose a certain unit of time, second, to say how many of those stills need to play there. Yeah. And throughout our motion pictures history, we have experimented with a lot of different frame rates. 15 frames, 20 frames, 24 frames, 25, 30, 50,
60,
48,
yep.
60, 120, 240, and so on. And with each one of them, you get a certain look and feel.
Yep.
You get a certain set of features and stuff that you can do with that. And if someone wants to deal with video, anything more complicated than just posting on Instagram, it's very important to at least understand.
Because understanding the nature of frame rates helps you understand the nature of shutter speed and motion blur and the basic timeline math for slowing down footage. I mean, just understanding that one concept affects so many other areas right there.
It's not weird, it's math.
It is just math, yes, exactly. That was a good comment of yours, made me laugh.
If you're that person that asked that question, I'm sorry. But it is very important, that's the purpose of this episode, is that you need to go and learn the basics, and at the least, because once you go to a group of professionals and you ask them, why is it choppy when I'm slowing down to quarter speed my 60 frame footage on my 30 frame a second timeline? It's like, why am I having to explain this extremely basic concept of frame rate? And the thing is, the follow-up to that question was, what if I put in a timeline of 60 frames a second? And then you're not going to be able to slow down at all. It's just pure math.
Yep.
You need 60 frames in a second to play normal, and you have 60 frames a second. If you slow it down, you're going to have less frames a second to play with. Yes, it was... I hope I was not impolite
or condescending. Yeah, I mean,
or condescending.
My problem isn't people not knowing this stuff, because there was a point in time where I didn't know any of this, and there's still plenty more that I don't know. But before I jump on a thread, which instantly begs for many people's attention, I look for the answer myself. And that is easier now than it's ever been. And that's the thing, is it's like, and it's also usually faster, because I could Google frame rate and probably the first hit would give me more information and in more depth than whatever poster responds to my comment.
Probably. And the thing is, it's an incredibly useful skill to have for anyone to be able to find the answers themselves in any job. If you get hired somewhere, but everything that you need to do, you ask someone about it, you're not only taking your time to do your thing, you're taking someone else's time that then they cannot do their stuff. So being able to be independent, no, I'm not going to say smart, but resourceful, it is important. It's a great skill to have. Now, on the other hand, if I have someone around with me, I always tell them, no question is too stupid. If you have a question, ask it, of course, because I don't want... The other thing that is bad is people assuming, because a lot of times I've seen that people don't know the answer for a question. Mm-hmm. They either ask or they assume. They still don't research.
Yeah.
They assume. Oh, I thought it was like this. So they assumed that was like that. So they didn't ask. They didn't research. They assumed. They created an answer that most of the time turns out to be wrong. So much stuff that we can...
Which reminds me of something else, which it directly relates to this, but it's social media in general, is like, for example, somebody has a question, somebody gives an answer, it's the incorrect answer, somebody else gives an incorrect answer, somebody gives the correct answer, the original poster says, boom, I got it. Then you get 20 other people after that giving the incorrect answer. It's like, did you bother to read the thread before you posted? Because like it's been solved, or the solution you're proposing has already been debunked. Like people just, and they don't think ahead of time.
I want my opinion too. I want to give my opinion too. Mm-hmm. I'm also smart, guys. I'm also smart. I also know the answer.
Yeah, which is funny because it's like before you posted, I probably didn't even know you existed. I had no positive or negative thoughts of you. So my affirmation is irrelevant to your existence.
Yeah, but that's it, right? Attention seeking. The thread is already long. All of that has been mentioned, wrong and correct answers have already come up, but there is always someone that will still go there and say, oh, everyone there is wrong, this is the correct answer, and that has already been mentioned before. It's attention seeking, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, YouTube and podcasts in a way is attention seeking as well. We are seeking some attention from some people that would be interested in what we have to say.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and
I'm not, and neither are you, plugging our own personal websites every 5 minutes or ever, really.
or merch.
All we're talking about is what we're talking about. And so people can feel free to like or dislike our personalities. That's fine. But there are lots of shows that are wonderfully produced, and I just don't care for them for no good reason. Just don't like the person or don't like the format. And maybe I'm missing out, and that's totally fine.
Well, I'm not a good interviewer, and all the time on my channel, on my personal channel, I go and I have people talking with me there, and I'm kind of interviewing them. I'm a horrible interviewer.
Yeah.
And I think people are not there because I'm a good interviewer. People are there because of they're interested to hear what those other people have to say, or maybe even what I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't really know. I don't have an opinion about attention seeking, honestly. It is the current currency. If you have a lot of attention, you actually end up getting a good job probably because you're very visible. You're working on your personal brand, I guess.
Well, not all attention is the same quality of attention.
Yeah, it's not. But if there is a say that says, "Who is not seen is not remembered," or something like that. I don't know if you have that in English, but translated from Portuguese, that's what it is. If people don't see you, they don't remember about you. And I can definitely see that in my personal life now that I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. I barely see my friends because they don't see me on Facebook. They don't see me posting anywhere. They don't see me posting on Instagram. So basically, I ceased to exist.
But I don't think that's a problem with Facebook. I think that's a problem with friends.
It is
because they could call you if they wanted to.
But I don't think it's a problem with friends in general. It's just a problem that everyone got stuck into this reality of social media.
Yeah.
And if you're not on social media, you don't exist. For example, I don't know about any events because there are no websites about events anymore. Events are not posted anywhere outside Facebook anymore. So when I want to go out dancing, it's pure luck that I'm going to find a place that has an interesting thing going on. But those are different things. But
well, that's how we lived for a couple thousand years before Facebook.
Yeah, and I'm actually really enjoying being able to, I want to talk to Gabriel. I go and I text Gabriel directly. I call Gabriel and see how everything is going. It's so much nicer to actually have that direct communication. And it's not just because I saw that he posted something. It's also very interesting to receive a happy birthday call.
Yeah.
Now that I'm not on Facebook. That person actually went at least through the trouble of putting my birthday in their calendar or in their contacts. So they at least get that notification on their phone and say, oh, today's Felipe's birthday. They don't need to remember from the top of their head, but they're going to have to call me or text me directly. And it's not going to just be an automated message, say congrats to Felipe, today is his birthday.
Yeah.
And there it is, together with 1,000 other people. So yeah, it's very nice. Sometimes I sit here and I'm bored. I'm like, okay, let me go through my contact list. And I start scrolling. Oh, I haven't heard about this person in a while. I go there and I call them. And I like this old way of doing things. Call me old-fashioned now. But yeah.
I'll call you old-fashioned with your headphones and your microphone and our live streaming over the internet video that's 4K. Then we're going to be editing in a modern NLE.
Yeah, very old-fashioned.
Super old-fashioned. Another thing.
Good point.
That just crossed my mind. Apple. And Apple haters. And every time Apple does anything, the exact same tired arguments from the same people keep coming nonstop. No. And most of them are nonsensical arguments. There are a few that have something to them, but
that's attention seeking.
Yeah.
That's 100% attention seeking.
Yeah.
Or envy. Either one.
It's like
It's either envy or attention seeking.
there are lots of PCs out there. I mean, like infinite variety that you can configure. I've never gone onto a PC forum or a PC website and said, "What a waste of money." I just don't buy it. Like,
Who even cares,
if
right? You don't like it, don't buy
if
it.
you don't want a Mac, don't buy it. Like, I don't go to my neighbor's house with their expensive car and say, "You idiot! Only an idiot would buy a car like that." It's not for me. So I bought a different car. Like, it's that simple. Who cares?
It's like, oh my God, it's mango season now. Mangoes are so stupid. They're so horrible. Why mangoes? Mangoes, why they are in the trees? You don't need to go and eat the mango.
Yeah.
It's you don't need to spend your money with the mango. You don't need to be thinking about the mango. So
yeah. I like the comments as far as Apple, where people are, and this happens all the time, where they're like, we drink the Kool-Aid. Only mindless people would buy a Mac. Only mindless people would spend this much money on their computer. Meanwhile, like 7 years later, when we're still using and making money on the same computer, like now what?
No, and to think that those people, they are probably not spending hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars on a watch that is made of gold. Some of them probably don't do that, right? Some of them are not going to be spending dozens of thousands of dollars on a car just because of the name or just because of a specific feature that the car have. They are not going to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a house that, well, let's get Paul, Logan Paul,
okay.
the brothers, Logan Paul and I forgot the name of the second one. I mean, do you really need that palace of a house?
No.
So, I mean, there are a lot of people with palaces of houses and they don't need all of that space. Of course, I'm not even talking about minimalism. I'm just talking about you don't need it, but you still buy it, and it's not a problem. So
yeah, go for it. I don't care.
Yeah, you can pay for it. Okay, go pay for it. It's your money. You pay taxes on your money, and I don't understand. No one has a gun pointed at people's faces and say, this year you're gonna have to buy the latest, most expensive Apple computer, even if you just browse the internet.
I was listening to a bunch of our podcasts over the last few weeks, and I was reminded of a story that I had told where I was freelancing for a video production company, a number of years ago, and they showed me this brand new, it was like a $5,000 or $6,000 tripod. And I thought, you guys are f***ing idiots. Why would you? That's just absurd. And now my tripod's like $1,400. It's the Sackler Flowtech. But given enough years of experience, it became very clear to me why somebody would spend that much on a tripod. I just didn't know better at the time, And I jumped the gun, and I was totally way off base. I didn't actually say that to them. I thought that, but and there are tripods much more expensive than $6,000. But if you don't understand why it costs that much, then you haven't done this long enough. And so the people who, for example, complain about a $5,000 new Apple XDR HDR display or the Mac Pro are like, well, this clearly isn't for you. If you don't understand why it costs this much, or relatively speaking, this little, thinking of the display in particular, then you don't have any business commenting on this, really.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And a couple of things popped into my head here. The first one is, like you said, if you're having those comments, if you're so negative against something like this, it might be because you don't have 100% understanding about what's going on. First thing. The second thing is experience as well, because experience is going to count. Like the thing with the tripod. But even more than that, well, it's not even more than that. It's experience. When, for example, people say from outside how bad a company is doing because they chose person X instead of person Y to do this or that. I mean, the person from outside, they're not working with them every day. They don't understand what it is required on that corporate infrastructure in order to have moved person X or Y into a certain position. We are just always speculating from outside what's going on. And I'm talking about Johnny Ive and the corporate restructuring that's happening right there. It's a company that have hundreds of thousands of, not hundreds of thousands of people, like dozens of thousands of employees around the world. And there is a very big multinational corporate hierarchy there. And what people are not understanding is not as easy as choosing, hey, John, you do that. Hey, Paul, you do that. And that's it. It's so much more complicated. I came from a company that nowadays is nearly 500,000 employees in size. And when you understand that inside such a big company, it's like you have a lot of very smaller companies, and they are collaborating with each other. They are selling services to each other. They are supporting each other and things like that. I mean, it's not as simple as, oh, the chief of design left, so now everyone is ruined. My God, there's a whole team of people there that have been working for decades together. and plus, I was listening to a podcast, one of the episodes from Rene Ritchie, and he was interviewing an ex-designer from Apple.
Okay.
And their commenting is like, it's not like Johnny Ive goes into a room, spends 15 minutes there, and a magical design comes out of it, and people are just gonna work on it, and oh my God, Johnny Ive. No, there is so much stuff, so much work that goes in behind the scenes. They do hundreds of prototypes to scratch hundreds of prototypes.
It's no different than an architect. I mean, the architect might come up with the initial plans, but it takes a whole team and crew of people to actually build this house. It's no different than a director who fundamentally answers for all the good or bad things about the movie, but there are dozens to thousands of people that actually do the rest of the work. It's no different than Johnny Ive isn't just, he's not in a room soldering and welding and
yeah, great point. I think Johnny Ive would a good analogy would be Johnny Ive is more like the director of a movie. He has a vision that not necessarily is concrete, and he's gonna articulate that vision to a whole team of people that in themselves they're gonna imaginate that, and they're gonna try to put out of their heads into something that is physical and it's understandable. And as a director, he's gonna be saying, maybe this would be the direction that we could go. That's a good idea. Maybe let's pursue this, or maybe no, this one doesn't feel very good. And as a director, if you're giving a good contribution, you're gonna say, wow, I actually love your design, and I think we're gonna pursue this direction.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that was him that did the design. No. It doesn't mean that he is just the person that is keeping the boat in the right direction. And people have learned this with him. People have had their own experiences. There are great professionals that are there. Apple is not doomed.
I was just going to say, related to Apple, is this whole Apple is doomed thing. Every time Apple does something, doomed, they'll be gone in 6 months. They said that when Steve Jobs left the first time. And then, well, in that example, Apple kind of was doomed until he came back. But now Steve Jobs is gone, and it's continuing on. And people
it's been 10 years.
Yeah, people may lament the direction it's going. You can like it or not, in which case you don't have to buy their products. It's really no different than George Lucas left Star Wars, they left Lucasfilm, and they're still making movies. And you don't have to like the new movies, but it's continuing on making movies. I would argue there is something missing, but there's also something there that he didn't bring to the table. So,
I'm sorry, I always try to not do this, and I always don't do this, but this time I will have to name names. Max Yuriev, he used to have an excellent YouTube channel.
Yeah.
He made great comparison videos and etc. But his videos now are so clickbaity, and all his reviews are honest reviews now. And he keeps on putting videos like, don't buy this computer. I mean, in which position are you in to say to everyone on the internet, do not buy this specific computer? Do you know everyone's specification and what they need and etc.? I mean, it's a very strange way of putting yourself out there.
there's been a huge shift over the last few years from opinions. How do I say this? People think opinions are facts, and they're not. Opinions are not facts. And so you not liking something doesn't make that thing garbage.
Yeah.
It could be the best thing ever for somebody else. And so,
like Rogue One?
Yeah, or, like anything. I mean, I had a guy come out today because we got this new house and our air conditioner doesn't work. So I had the seller send a guy over to look at it, and he couldn't figure it out. They said, "Oh, the thermostat's broken." Well, it's a Honeywell thermostat. I'm not going to go online and say all Honeywell thermostats are garbage. Nobody should. No, I got it done, and it's annoying, but it happens. My opinion is I had a bad experience with this, but it's not a universal truth about all Honeywell or all thermostats. I had 2 iMac Pros that had hardware issues. I didn't rant and rave that all iMac Pros are garbage. If my particular ones didn't have issues, I'd be super happy with it.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that are using them day in, day night.
Yep. Your opinion is not the fact, and even your specific fact isn't necessarily a universal truth, right? I mean, I bought a Manfrotto tripod a number of years ago. I think it's not great. Other people swear by it, but it depends on what you're looking for in it.
Yeah.
It's the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera wasn't really your cup of tea. I'm so far loving it. It doesn't mean either one of us is better than the other, but we have different styles of shooting and different expectations and different likes and dislikes for how we use our tools. That's completely valid. I don't understand.
Yeah, for example, if I would direct a movie and you would be the DOP, I don't care which camera you're going to use. You're going to choose the camera and whatever, Does the end result look good? That's all that matters.
Okay, a little bit of a veer off here, but it relates back to the beginning of not understanding basic information. Okay, so I've got a client who I went out of state and produced a video for. And before I even shot the video, I said, I'd like to do this in an ultra-wide format, 235-1. Maybe I did 239. Anyway, it was long and skinny. And I explained what it was, and he says, well, I don't know. I'll have to see it. I'll know it when I see it. So we saw it. I went through 5 rounds of revisions, approved every time, boom, done, exported it. And then their video guy, who, to be totally fair, he's just an IT guy that got roped into doing video. So I don't really hold this against him at all. But he said, well, how do I put this on Instagram? And I said, well, you just put it on Instagram. You can do whatever you want now. Instagram accepts horizontal or landscape video. But fine, there were no bars. I exported it in a true 235-1. So I gave him another version with the bars. So 16:9 cropped in there. Fine, throw it up on Instagram. That wasn't good enough. So suddenly they had asked me to re-edit the entire video straight in 16:9, which took a bit of work because you're looking at this little frame. So I'm reframing my 4K footage within these shots. So I had to reframe everything shot to shot. But it's all because they didn't understand what I was even talking about, So I had to go through all these changes because this basic understanding of frame sizes or even how to upload them. I mean, you can put whatever you want online. It doesn't really matter what size it is.
A little bit of lack of attention too, right? Because you went through several revisions,
Yeah.
all of them with this aspect ratio.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's unfortunately this is things that we deal with when we are dealing with clients, right? It's maybe one more thing in the checkbox. Are you gonna use this for Instagram? Are you gonna use this for YouTube? Are you gonna use this for Facebook? Are you gonna use this for Instagram Stories? Are you gonna use this for Instagram TV? Because then they check all the boxes, and then they're gonna say, okay, now we have to talk about it because all of these are different aspect ratios. They're all meant for different purposes. If I shoot in order to be able to deliver in all of them, we're shooting really wide. We're not having close-ups. You're not having a close-up like this of someone because you're going to put on Instagram and you're going to be seeing this of the person. So those conversations are going to be, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, and if you're only paying for one video,
yes,
and you're going to platforms that have very different visual requirements, you need to tell me which one to shape that for, and you fit the rest in there.
Yeah.
Because
which one is the main one?
Yeah, because I don't give a about Instagram at all. Now, if you're a client and if that's your main platform, you got to let me know ahead of time. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's like we don't necessarily like vertical videos, but if from the very beginning is we're gonna do this for vertical screens.
Sure, but you have to let me know before I show up with my camera.
But also don't say that. Go through the whole shoot, and then after the export, you say, okay, we also want to put on YouTube in horizontal.
Sorry.
Well,
yeah.
You should have said that in the very beginning.
I also want to get paid 10 times as much, but we can't always get what we want.
Then again, it's for us like to ask in the beginning, oh, it's vertical and horizontal. Then there is a certain amount of education that we're gonna tell there to clients. It's like, look, it's good sometimes to actually have an application on your phone that you can double tap and it actually fills the screen. Sure. So for example, Plex, which is an application that I use, and I put our Get a Grip episodes on Plex. Here are some of the videos that I worked recently. And it's very useful when you're having that conversation with a client about aspect ratios. And one good way of showing them is actually using an application that you can get something that's horizontal and put it in on the vertical so they understand what you're talking about, sure, that you're going to lose the field of view, right? So for example, this video here, I worked very recently is a... It's nice that's playing because then we can sync the audio. Okay, so it's playing now on the horizontal. And if I put my iPhone on the vertical, it happens what you would expect. I can see the horizontal video on my vertical, so I have the bars on top of the bottom. But if I double tap on the screen, it goes on vertical. So this shows them that, for example, the way I shot, because actually in this case I shot everyone centered, it would still be kind of useful, but it changes completely what you are actually seeing because you don't see anymore the ambience of the thing.
Well,
so
even if they weren't centered, because you have all that information on the left and the right, you could still slide it left and right.
And you see my close-up.
It's the exact same thing I did with my ultra wide screen, only this direction versus this direction. Yeah.
So and you see that on the close-ups, it doesn't look great, right? In the ones that they are full body, it's okay.
Yeah.
So it's actually very important that maybe sometimes when people are having this conversation with a client about vertical and horizontal, to be able to really show what it would mean to just get something that's horizontal and put it on vertical, or say, oh, I shot in vertical. Okay, can we put in horizontal? I'm like, there is nothing to the sides here.
Yeah.
You understand that there is nothing. So I find that very, very useful. So I think Plex is probably a good application to maybe illustrate that. There are probably other video applications that you can just double tap and it crops. But yeah, it has to be part of that conversation in the beginning, right? Where you're going to deliver and make them understand once you make this choice, there is no turning back.
Yeah, you're set. You know, and if you want to record both formats simultaneously, well, that's a different scope of shoot with a different budget. Yeah,
because you're having to shoot twice, literally.
Yeah. And if it's a live event, it means you have to shoot with two completely different setups.
Now, there was a session at the Creative Summit last year from Ian Anderson where he was showing, okay, if you're going to deliver to several aspect ratios, here it is how you would you would want to approach your video. So it's basically shooting on horizontal, but framing everything for all of those aspect ratios. So there was something about your framing from the top, because everything cuts from the sides and from the bottom. So you're framing from the top, if I remember correctly. And of course, avoiding this type of framing, close-ups and this and that. So it's definitely an interesting session. And some people would call it a workaround, but what isn't in life a workaround?
Really? Yeah, well, I'm a huge fan of Ian. He's a great guy.
That's called a workflow.
And if that's your option, or if that's the job requirement, you have to deliver both, but you've just got the one camera, then he's right on. I mean, there are best practices for doing the best you can with that one camera. I would argue that both formats are going to suffer because
they will.
Nothing is targeted for that particular canvas. But again, to his credit,
Yeah, but
you got to
I
do what
think
you got to do.
yeah, I think the interesting thing is that a lot of things that we deliver is talking heads, right?
Yeah.
You have your clients that are absolutely not talking heads. You really need a context of everything that's around for you to understand what the video is trying to show.
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue that most films are like that anyway. But when it's talking heads, so the important thing that you have is the talking head, the B-roll that's about whatever the talking head is talking about, right? And whatever graphics that will explain those things. So if you're able to plan and execute those things that way, yeah, no problem. Now, one thing that's also a good resource for shooting vertical. I mean, we're talking about so many different things. I'm gonna close this vertical thing right now. It's that you can use the camera on the vertical. Like if you're gonna just deliver on the vertical,
yeah.
use all the resolution you have available. Just put your camera on the vertical and shoot it that way. Now,
well, when I shot in the 235-1, it wasn't just I wanted a skinny video. It's because, look, I've filmed more tennis videos than I wish on anybody. And I had a chance here to be more creative than I'm normally allowed to be. And I had these weren't individuals. They weren't even matches. They were people doing a tennis-related activity. I can't really talk about it. But you get groups of people at a time, oftentimes lined up. And I don't know if you've ever seen a tennis court, but the floor isn't that interesting and the ceiling isn't that interesting. The people are. So that aspect ratio gave me a perfect canvas to see these people spread out without them being dwarfed by these huge dome ceilings. And it worked wonderfully. And while converting that back to a 16:9 format wasn't that painful, you're just reintroducing all this stuff that's like, why is this even in the shot? It's just a ceiling. So there was a reason why I chose that canvas. And
yeah, and for sure when you shot, you probably had guides for that format that you're going to shoot.
Yeah, something I love about the Blackmagic is not only do you get the lines, you can actually make it fully opaque or semi-opaque, so you can still see what's being recorded if you want, but it just completely blacks out.
Because you could have not had the ceiling and the extra floor if you would have shot and wanted to deliver 16:9, right? You would have framed different. But because you were framing for a different format and you had those guides there, you have this extra stuff that's being recorded that you were like, oh, I'm never going to use it anyway. So
I knew it was an option. I knew it was a backup plan that they might want.
And you shot 4K to deliver 1080 too, right? So you also wanted to have the
but it's not really 1080. It's a weird aspect. It's a weird size because I output.
Okay. It's a 2K horizontal.
But yeah, basically.
All right. I mean, so we talked about.
We talked about a lot of and this episode's not very focused.
This was nice. It was a conversation.
It's our first time back.
All right then. So thank you for you guys for having watched this. If it's the first time that you're, bumping to this channel, feel free to subscribe, to like, leave a comment. We also have this episode as an audio on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts from. And from my side, that's it.
We will see you next time, or you'll hear us next time.
Yeah. See you guys.